Hey, LeGrand Live, we're glad you're here. This is Eastern Oregon Talks, and we want to be sure and thank our sponsors today, Grand Ronde Hospital, Northwest Furniture and Mattress, EONI, and Anything to Digital. And today I have the pleasure of having the illustrious Mr. Will Bowman.
I have been called a lot of things in my life, but illustrious is not one of them.
Well, it's my...
It's a very, very interesting word.
It's my Will-esque term.
Illustrious.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I would
if Will had a word, it would be illustrious.
I would never use that term with anyone, except that you are always pulling the most obscure words out of nowhere. It's like, does anyone really know what the definition of that is?
The secret is I just make all of them up. It's like they're all they're bogus. There's none of them that are real. Yeah, they're all just, they're bogus.
Well, anyhow, Will, hey, thank you so much. And
no problem.
Yeah, as you may have known, I was on Coffee with Will. It's probably been a month ago or so, a little longer.
Weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and this was kind of my instigation to kind of have a peek behind the scenes of what happens in an organization like ours. And so, thanks, Will, for doing this and letting the tables be turned on you. And
it's terrifying.
Yeah,
it's absolutely terrifying. Actually, it's kind of nice. It's nice to just relax and not actually have to lead the conversation. It's nice to just kind of sit back and just be. So
good.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with, for those people that might not know, how did you get here? Where are you from? Where were you born? I don't know. Kind of give us a little, a little 5-minute.
Oh, wow, 5 minutes. That's okay.
Okay, the 3 minute.
I was going to say, man, that's a...
yeah, give us the story of Will's life.
There once was an illustrious baby. My story is I was born in Omaha, Nebraska, and grew up or spent about 6 years in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is, I always like to say, is the home of corn and football and nothing else. And they love those two things so much, they named the football team the Cornhuskers.
Right.
And, at a very early age, I realized I was not going to be a football baby, football kid. And so naturally, the logical conclusion was to move to Alaska, where you only have about 15 minutes to play football in the year. So,
okay, so then how did you get from Nebraska to Alaska?
Well, my parents moved there. My dad.
Oh, they took you with
Yeah,
you.
they took me with them. Yeah. No, I just wandered. So my parents, they moved to Alaska. My dad took a job with Gallup, and I spent the next 16 years in Fairbanks, Alaska. Cold, and I was teen, so somewhat depressed, and just ready to move on with my life. And it wasn't that bad. It wasn't really that bad. It was a good place to grow up. There was a lot of things to do outside, but when I got into college, I kind of realized that I kind of wanted to go someplace else and to try something new. And so I moved from there to LeGrand, Oregon. And, it was just, I really enjoyed it here. I mean, it was quiet and calm, and people were really nice, and there were 4 distinct seasons. I realized there were half of the seasons I'd been missing out on, And
because in Alaska, it's what?
It's cold and...
Not quite as cold?
Well, it's cold and bright. I guess that's the 2 seasons.
Oh.
You got -40, and then you got 14 hours of sunlight during the summer, and then you snap and it's the next one. There's nothing in between. So I came down here and I got involved at EOU. I was involved with Residence Life. I was involved with the Christian Club up on campus. I was involved with just a lot of different things. And after I graduated, I came to work here at Brent Media Services.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Now, tell us a little bit about your high school. Though you have kind of a trade school you didn't have a traditional high school experience.
No, yeah.
Talk about that
actually,
a little bit.
the high school that I had was a really cool experience because they built it kind of under the guise that they wanted people to be able to have trade experience during high school and to get college credits while they were still in high school. And I made the very good decision to go to this school instead of the bigger school, which was the other alternative. And while I was there, I studied IT long enough to realize I had no desire to be in IT. And then I also studied arts AV, which was primarily video, audio, graphic design, those kinds of things. And that landed me with some college credits in the area, and also enjoyed a realization that I really enjoyed crafting works of video, and working on and making videos and making and doing photography, and that just naturally morphed into me studying film production when I went to college.
And so then is there a collection of videos somewhere from when you were in high school?
Absolutely not.
I think I've seen those.
They don't exist.
There's some funky ones of you and your friends with a video camera.
There may or may not be a couple of those on YouTube.
That would be worth doing a search for.
I'm sure it would. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna make it easy though.
So then you delayed a little bit in starting college, right?
Right, and I did. I made the decision that there were some things that I wanted to do, and just some self-betterment and self-growth that I wanted to kind of realize. And so I took a year off between about 2 years of college in Fairbanks and actually coming to Eastern.
Okay.
So I took a year off, one of the best decisions I've ever made. And then I decided ultimately to come to Eastern, and I came to Eastern.
So then were you a transfer student?
I was a transfer student, and I was the proud recipient of the EOU transfer scholarship for 2 or 3 years while I was up there.
Wow. So how did you learn about EOU from being in Alaska? How did EOU come on your radar?
Well, there was 2 ways. One, my parents had some friends who had a friend or a family member that lived here that they were connected with. And they, kind of vied for it. But then also I had a friend named Tommy. And Tommy was an interesting fellow. It's kind of ironic, he did not enjoy his time at Eastern. He hated it. He hated being here. And I was always kind of like, Tommy, if you hate it so much, why are you there? But he didn't enjoy it. But through that, I kind of, got turned on to the school. And a lot of the things that he didn't like about it were things that I liked. Small school, not as many people, just a more, he said there wasn't a lot happening here, but I mean, I enjoyed the outdoors, and I kind of enjoyed the quieter atmosphere, and, so he was a very big, sort of adrenaline junkie, kind of get out, go hang out with people. I was kind of the find a good book in a nice little warm corner in a library and sit down and read, or go mountain biking.
Yeah.
So all the things he didn't like, I kind of enjoyed. And so he was kind of the way that I got turned on to being here at Eastern.
So, and if I'm remembering right, you had never been to Eastern
I'd never
actually
been to Eastern.
until you showed up for school.
Never been to Eastern. No, it was kind of a little bit of a leap of faith, but I mean, it was one that I was pretty, confident in making. And I showed up, I believe it was January 2011, and my parents came with me, and I still have photos from when my sister was here. We went out and did a photo shoot. There's a photo of my sister and I in front of the little red door on the Episcopalian church. And that was when I actually started, and they came and they dropped me off and said sayonara, and I said okay then, and it was great. I loved Eastern the moment that I got here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So now, do you remember the first time we met?
I do actually, and I've told this story many times. I actually remember the first. It was in Mackenzie Theater, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I walked up, and you were setting up to stream something, as you're apt to do, and I kind of just came up and introduced myself, and I think that was probably my sophomore year or something like that.
Yeah. And I remember and as I still do, as you know, I mean, since there's so few of us that do media and video and so on and so forth, you're just attracted to somebody. I remember you had a camera and you had a monitor, and it's like, okay, he's beyond amateurish, I couldn't see what you were shooting, but but at least
I shooting something?
Yeah, you were shooting some footage.
Oh.
You were shooting some footage, yeah, and that's kind of how I knew that something was going on. And you gave me a card
Oh.
at that time. Yeah.
Wow.
And,
Gosh, I was like way more professional than I am now.
yeah, and it was funny. And it was one of the cards that you had from Alaska. And it had your, in fact, I probably still have it because I collect those things and I just hang on to them forever. Yeah, yeah. And so then, and I'm trying to remember. I don't think. And then there was somebody else who was working for Michelle was working for me at the time, and no, it was at that time it was Josiah was actually working for me.
Yeah.
And so then I think I talked to Josiah and hey, I met Will and we talked a little bit.
Right.
And then a couple of years later, when I was looking for somebody because Michelle was moving, I dug out your card and called you. The number still worked.
It did. I don't change very often.
Yeah.
It takes me a while to move on things. So.
Yeah. So that was kind of the connection, and eventually you ended up
Coming to
going to work. Yeah. So and I think I'm trying to remember. Were you through? You hadn't quite graduated when you.
I had not quite graduated. I still had some senior thesis work to do in my second degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you came out with 2 degrees.
I came out with 2 degrees.
One's not enough.
One's not enough. No. Well, it was. I mean, I'm sure it would have been enough, but when I was at Eastern, I kind of developed. I studied film production. That was the one I carried over from Alaska. But when I got to Eastern, I took some classes with the professors up there, Jody Barron, David Axelrod, and I just really enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed the writing, and I enjoyed it so much that I decided to make a second degree out of it. So I got a second degree in English as well.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit when you first came to work. We were in this 700 square foot office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I barely even fit in there.
It wasn't very big.
No.
Yeah. So I don't know. Tell me about your experience. How did that go? And did you have any thoughts when you first got there? And I don't know, any experiences or insights that you remember that were unique? At first, you were doing mostly anything to digital stuff.
Yeah, I was doing mostly anything to digital stuff.
Which for those of you who don't know, that's converting VHS to DVDs and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it was a very small building, and there was a lot of equipment in that very small building.
Yeah,
that's what I remember. There was not a lot. There was a lot of stuff, and not a lot of room for the stuff. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I remember.
And that still, unfortunately, it still is my trend. There's a lot of stuff in a little space. Yeah,
a lot of stuff in a little space.
So, talk about how La Grande Live TV started happening. How did that come to, what is your memories of how that came about? And
well, from what I remember, you had kind of started a little bit before, I came on board, but you were kind of, from my memory, you were kind of looking to do the La Grande Live, and then when I came on board, that kind of gave you the freedom of having someone who kind of knew their way around a camera, knew how to write, knew how to, to edit, to be able to start to, produce and form and mold some of these shows, the Newsish Roundup, Coffee with Will, those kinds of things. And, so you kind of said, okay, well, this is maybe something we should try. And so then you gave me sort of like, well, we want to do a little news show. So I kind of started to think and came up with the incipient form of the Newsish Roundup, which were god-awful. I look back at them sometimes and I'm like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? And then I started on those, and I think I just started having people into the studio to have coffee with them, and then Coffee with Will was born, and we just and then it just morphed from there.
Yeah. So, so do you remember what was the first, and it wasn't even called Newsish Roundup, I think it was called News Roundup at that point.
Something like that, yeah.
So where was the first one?
Joe Bean's Coffee.
I think there was one before that.
I think Joe Bean's was the first one that I did, and then I went to the baseball field.
Okay, that was
the second one. I remember because it was a horrible experience. I forgot like 3 things, had to run back to the studio like 2 or 3 times. The battery died. It was just a terrible experience, and it will be forever cemented into my brain.
And And there was a little gimmicky thing that we had going on during.
Yeah,
that.
it was
What
the
that?
it was the button. It was the what is it called?
Animals were harmed in the
we was how many stories in a certain amount of time, and you had to hit the button. I hit the button every time, and it said, I don't remember what it said. It said something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was,
Nailed it or something like that every time that I would do that, and then we would go through like 10 stories.
so we're gonna cut some of that footage.
Oh,
into this.
okay, of course, sure.
I mean, I hadn't decided
You
until now, but
you
absolutely.
would do that to me because my
Yeah.
hair and beard was just out of control.
But it was totally. I mean, it was just the beginning, you know. And I remember you pitching that to me. It's like, okay, what if we get a button and we're going to do as many news stories as we can in 2 minutes or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but you know, and so then, but it was just trial and error.
Yeah, it was absolutely trial and error, and I was reading it all off of the computer that was there, and it was it was horribly wonderful.
Yeah, we didn't have a teleprompter at that point, did we?
We did not.
It was just a computer that was like under the lens of the camera, so that
Yeah.
Well, wow. Do you remember any other crazy experiences that you might have had when you've been doing LeGrand Live stuff?
Do you mean the whole time?
Yeah, I mean, any remarkable things that
Well,
when
there
you
was-
were doing a live shoot or something?
There was one time, one very distinct memory I have of doing the LeGrand Live was I was shooting a video about the restoration of the creek, 5 Points Creek that they were doing, and I was hanging out with some people from the Department of Wildlife and the Ranger District.
Yeah.
And we went out there and we were kind of filming around. We did an interview and we filmed, and they were out there and they had these big backhoes and they were, and they were kind of putting stuff in and migrating the stream a little bit. And I was going to go down and walk down and get a little bit more shots of the stream. Well, I started walking and, I got kind of down to this clearing, and all of a sudden I heard a like a gun shot, and it hit 30 feet from me. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm getting shot at. and I think her name was Amanda. I'm trying to remember. She was with me, and we were both like, holy crap. And so we turned around and we just kind of booked it back up, and like, we kind of tried to come back down, but there was a second shot, and it also, we thought ricocheted some off in there. We're like, okay, this is not okay. So, and then we went, and I think she ended up calling it in, but I was like, man, this is an eventful day in the life of a small town news reporter,
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing you would
reporter.
expect, like in LA, and here you are in
LG.
the outskirts of LeGrand.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I think that was probably the most exciting day on LeGrand Live that I've ever had.
Well, let's transition here just a little bit. So what you may not know, LeGrand Live is that Will is moving on. He's not sure. I think he's still trying to figure out exactly when and where and so on and so forth. But his last day actually here for LeGrand Live will be December 22nd. Is that what we figured out today? Yeah.
December 22nd.
So, and it doesn't mean that he won't be around, and he still might guest appear, or he still might host different things and so on and so forth. But that's a big transition for us. And what you may, I mean, you've seen Will progress and morph over the last years.
See, you can do it too. Just make words up. It's great.
Yeah, but what you haven't seen is just or maybe some of you have, but Will's been just a tremendous asset from the standpoint of production, the Brent Clapp media side that actually kind of pays the bills for LeGrand Live TV. And so he's been very involved in the production. I would say probably a third of your time has been LeGrand Live, maybe a half a time. I don't know. At times,
I'd say probably half a time.
yeah,
It's just,
but the other half has been production.
Right.
and whether that be for Barretto or Boise Cascade or Grand Ronde Hospital or whatever we're working on at the time. So anyhow, we're still trying to figure out exactly how to get by without you. Means I have to go back to work.
Yeah, that's what that means. Like, you haven't been working up until this point.
No, I have to start doing more production, and we've got to figure out another way to do administration type stuff. But anyhow, so talk to us about this. Tell us kind of what your plan. What are you thinking about doing?
Well, it's kind of an amorphous thing,
So there you go. Was that a made-up word?
No,
or is
that's
that
a real word. That's a real word. They're mostly real words.
Okay,
I just
okay.
make you saying they're made up. Amorphous being, it's kind of constantly changing, malleable. It's kind of shifting. For a while now, my wife and I have been wanting to move toward the Bend area. And we've kind of been thinking about it, kind of been doing a little bit of, just kind of cogitating and thinking about where we're going to go next. And, Bend has become someplace we really enjoy. We do a lot of trips there. We've met a really, really great church group there. We, love the outdoors. And, we've kind of just, that's the direction that we're wanting to go. And so that is going to be where we're going to go. The how is not 100% there. Over the course of the last month, I've been applying for some jobs, and I've had really, really good reactions. And the biggest, I probably would have had a job right now, except for the fact that I'm not a local. That's been the big thing that I've kind of gotten turned down, because there's been several situations where I've done an interview, they've done a really good job, but they ended up wanting to hire someone local because, they're there right then, right away, and, they're right there. They have housing, they have everything, So, but, the thing about, not being here anymore is it might free me up to actually be able to go and camp for a week and spend time there and be really proactive about, getting out there, meeting people and those kinds of things. So I'm currently in the job hunting process. I'm also possibly thinking about maybe starting something up of my own, little side business over there, and kind of experimenting a little bit with making some of my own money. So, but like I said, I don't 100% know just yet. We're still kind of trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
But that's the direction I'm heading.
So what do you want to do? Given all of the experiences that you've had over the course, I don't know. Yeah.
If it was a dream job, to be honest with you, the most enjoyable thing that I've had doing here at Laganda Live has been interviewing the people. And this is not me just saying this, but I have had immense pleasure, selfish pleasure taken out of just sitting down with people on this stage and talking to them and listening to them and just hearing who they are, what they care about, and just getting to give them the opportunity to talk about that. I think tomorrow, if I was given $1 million and I was said, what are you going to do with it? I would probably try and find some way that I could keep interviewing people and, talking to them and goofing off with them on camera and really just kind of allowing them the safe space to be vulnerable and talk about what they care about. I think that's been my favorite aspect of this job. But then again, you can't really, that's kind of a little bit of a pipe dream to move someplace and just, get to do what you want right away. So, I love the idea of interviewing people, of talking to them and telling their stories. But, I don't know, that kind of a job is a 1 in a million kind of a thing. So that would be something that I would be really passionate about doing, even if it's not live camera, even if I was able to sit down and talk to them and, shoot them and then tell their story through an edited video. That'd be pretty cool too. But I don't know. I'm kind of in a place where I'm having to sort of shift and ask myself that question of what do I want to do?
What part of that do you really, what is unique about them telling their stories on camera that makes it so enjoyable for you?
Well, I've always had kind of a love-hate relationship with film.
Right,
On the one hand, you have something which, is really, really very powerful. I mean, there's very little that's like watching an image of someone emote,
Right.
like, when you write something, I mean, I can sit down with a piece of paper, I can write, Lydia cried, and that's powerful, but there's something so much more raw about watching a video of the same thing happen. It's very hard to capture, the way that someone's mouth quivers, or, the way that their brows wrinkle, or whatever. And some of the best writers can do that. Some of the best painters and drawers can really do that, but video just gives you this sort of real-time access to a person's heart and emotions and just the way they carry themselves that it's very difficult to get at through other mediums. On the other hand, film is expensive. It's hard on our environment. It costs a lot of money. And sometimes a lot of times it kind of boils down and it sort of disintegrates into this sort of spectacle driven thing, which really isn't very powerful. It's just big and beat you over the head like a club. So for me, it's the quiet moments in cinema and video, and the ability to really look at someone and just see them in real time, feeling what they feel, thinking what they think, caring about what they care about. And then just being able to be on set with them and just listen to them talk about those cool things and just feel the things and see the things has just been really cool. I really have enjoyed that. I mean, there have been moments, there have been times when I've been in the studio and I've been sitting there and I've been interviewing someone and they've started to tear up, and they just start to cry a little bit, and that's a really vulnerable moment.
Right.
I mean, being in front of a camera is a very vulnerable experience because not only are you opening yourself up to something that's going to be there for a really long time, there are going to be other people that are going to be watching,
Right.
And for someone to feel comfortable enough with me, being there with them in front of a camera, to be able to do that is just a real honor for me,
Yeah.
and I hope that, and it just brings me a lot of joy to see people do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is so authentic.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it is so real.
Right.
And you're right, you do feel honored
Right.
that they let you in.
Right,
That
right.
they, and sometimes they might not volunteer to let you in.
Right.
The emotion just overcomes or overtakes them, and then it's your job to help them feel okay, help them
Right.
feel safe.
Right.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird because video in itself that you're going to show somebody else is not safe.
No, not at all.
Yeah, it's openness. I mean,
Right.
so I totally follow that.
Right.
Well, let's talk about some of your experiences here. So, shifting gears here a little bit. So, what of all of the tasks that you've done or that you do on a regular, and maybe you just answer that. What's kind of your favorite thing? Would you say?
Interviewing and working with a team, on a creative project.
Yeah.
Those are my two favorite things.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Coming up with something bigger than yourself. I mean, that's the
Well,
team
right,
aspect
yeah.
of it.
And, well, and being able to delegate to people who I know can do a job better than me. There's nothing, I mean, I'm actually kind of a lazy person. Like, you might not actually think that, but I'm actually a pretty lazy person. I like to not do things. I like to give things away as much as humanly possible. And so when I find someone who is really skilled at what they're doing, and I can just give it to them, that's like, and then just, see them do their thing and do it well. Like, I just love that experience, So I enjoy being on a team with people who are good at what they do.
So, but I've seen you, and this is a divert from where I was going to go. I've seen you change a little bit over when you first started working for me. It's like, I don't ever want to be an employer.
Right.
I don't, I'm happy to work for somebody else and
Right.
so on and so
Right.
forth. And you've kind of changed.
Right.
You've morphed. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, as humans do, we definitely tend to morph. I think one of the things that, I've grown in this time here has been, learning some leadership skills and learning, how to best work with my employees to get them to sort of, to work best with my employees. And so I think that over the years, I would be very happy to be a part of a cog, to just take my one thing and just do it really well. I'd be very happy. There are things that I'm good at, that I enjoy doing, like shooting cinema, interviewing, that I'm good at, and I can do them really well. And I would be very happy to find an employer that I believe in, that I respect, that I'm like that way with, and just do that for them. Like I would be very happy to do that. But at the same time, I also enjoy the position of sort of being over and facilitating so that people under me, and that's something I've learned through this job, is I've enjoyed being able to facilitate the people under me to be able to do their job well and to be able to come up with a quality product. And so as I've grown in this position, I think that that's become more of a possibility.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's kind of what that shift has been.
Yeah. Well, and I've seen you do that.
Right.
I mean, I've seen you move from being a cog and fulfilling a role to, I mean, you've been very good at that, and I've been very appreciative of your ability, not only on the LeGrand Alive side to take and create something and get it out the door, but also on the Brent Clapp media side of being able to meet with a client and conceptualize a project and come up with a budget and manage their expectations, fulfill their expectations, get it on time and under budget, and get it paid for. All of those, and that process is the same over and over and over again of what we do.
Rinse, repeat.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But and that's been a huge relief for me.
Right.
I've been able to experience that because you have fulfilled that role. So what's the task that still is your least favorite thing to do?
Oh man. That freaking 8mm projector. Everyone around here hates it, but I have a very special reason for hating it. There's nothing more that I don't enjoy than a piece of technology that
So
doesn't
explain
work.
what that is, though.
So one of the things we do here at LeGrand Live is we transfer 8mm to DVD. And
8mm film.
8mm film, right. And we have this beautiful, wonderful little projector in the back, which has been probably the cause of about 86% of my suffering since being at this position. Because it always breaks. It just never works the way that it's supposed to, and it's not a cheap piece of equipment.
And we've tried several.
Yeah, we've tried several of them, but they just, the nature of these things, kind of like printers, it's like the inventor must have, had some sort of like a generational curse on them, that they imbued into their creation, which then passed down to all of us to, suffer. So yeah, I would say that's probably still my least favorite.
Well, and you would, you should know that when I first started this business, and I'm in the back bedroom at our house and I was doing 8mm films, I'm thinking, I cannot wait until I can hire somebody to do this for me. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So I understand that. So, what have been your most valuable things that you've learned? Can you think of, and it might not be a thing, maybe it's a principle, but what are some of the things that you've kind of learned through
Being
this
here.
process and working here? Yeah.
I think one of the big ones would be delegate. I think delegation is a big thing that I've learned. The ability to take something and pass it off and to just, give that away so that I can focus on doing something that I am. Another one is I've learned to sort of trust my instincts more with things, my creative instincts and just my general instincts as well. And I've also learned how to interview. I think that that's been one of the biggest and most valuable things in that, how to conduct an interview, how to, what position to take in an interview to sort of allow people to feel comfortable and open to being able to open up, like I said, in front of camera. Interviewing, like I said, is a very, very scary thing for people. You're sitting there, you're looking at a camera, you realize that everything you're saying is being recorded. And there's something in our brains that just kind of changes. Instead of thinking, well, what do I want to say in this moment? You start to think, well, what should I say?
Right.
What is the right thing to say? Well, how's the right way to say this? And in the process, we end up saying things worse than we would say them if we kind of were able to kind of just allow. And a big part of someone being able to make that switch back from, okay, I'm reciting something to, no, I'm speaking from the heart, I'm speaking genuinely, is in the hands of the interviewer. And the way that they conduct themselves and just sort of the emotional structure, the power structure of the interview. And I think that I wrestled with it. If you look back to my older interviews, they're much worse, they were what they were, but, as I grew to learn how to lead someone through an interview, how to take power over an interview and realize that this person is relying on you to take them through a very scary experience, you know? And when you're confident and when you know where the interview is going, they loosen up so that they don't have to, you know? And I think that learning how to interview people has been one of the things that I've learned really well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, thinking back to when you were just graduating and you started, this is your first big job,
Right.
First full-time job.
Right.
What would you tell a student? What advice would you give a student? When and you were fortunate enough to start a job that was close to your degree,
Right.
which a lot of kids are not able to do. So.
Right.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give a student? Looking back on that, how would you weigh the experience of actually working in the field versus what you learned? And what would you tell a student about that?
So what would I tell a student about the differences between expectations and the reality, or just guidance along the way?
Well, so most students, you leave college and you feel like, okay, great. If it's an IT job, or if it's a software programming job, it's like, okay, I've been trained to go, do software, and then as soon as you land in a software firm, there's this huge learning curve that you didn't even know was there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, kind of relate to that. What advice would you tell a student, or what would you tell them about moving from an educational environment to a real world working experience?
I think two things that come to the top of my brain are, one, do well with what you have. If you're put into a position of authority in a job, however small that is, do that job well, and eventually you'll be given more. Don't focus on all the places you should be. Don't focus on all the places that you want to be. Mm-hmm. Embrace where you are, do that well, and eventually you'll move forward. And that's not me. That's me having learned that over many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something that was an easy lesson for me. I think the other one is that if you're in a creative field, create outside of work. A lot of times when you come into work, the authority of the projects that you're working on is no longer just yours. You have to, if you're working on a project, you don't have the final say, the client does, and the bottom line is the client doesn't always have as good artistic taste as you do. But because they have the pocketbooks,
right,
they get to make that decision. Yeah. And you can gently be like, hey, I don't necessarily agree with this, And you have the authority to say, well, I'm just not going to take this project if it's that big of a deal for you. But eventually the day comes a lot of times when you have to say, okay, this is your project, and we're going to ultimately do it your way, even though you may know that that is a completely wrong way of doing it. And you're probably right. And that gets frustrating sometimes.
Yeah.
That gets frustrating sometimes. But I think that one thing that has helped me, and a lot of creatives, I think, aren't able to get through that. They say, well, gosh, I don't really want to work in the creative field if that's what it's going to mean.
Right.
They get frustrated with that. They really struggle with that. But I think one thing that's helped me through this whole process is continuing to create outside of work.
Excellent.
Having side projects, having writing projects that I work on. I have a writers group that I go. Every day I generally wake up and I try to create. I draw or write or something like that. And those things are mine. Those things, for better or for worse, whether I'm right or wrong, those things are mine. And that's a sector
You're
for
in
me.
total control of them.
I'm total control of
Yeah.
them. They're a sector for me to create, to morph into the things that I want to morph, and and ultimately I get the final decision on what that is. And that's helpful because even though you might come to work and you throw yourself into a project, and that's good. You should throw yourself into projects. A lot of people get really disillusioned and they say, well, I'm not going to throw myself into projects because it's going to get changed. No, you should throw yourself into projects, but have something that you do outside of work that's creative, that is yours, to continue to enjoy creativity. And don't make it hard, make it joyful, make it something you just enjoy the process of doing. And in that, one, you're going to get better at being creative and you're going to get better at your job. Two, you're emotionally going to be more present at your job because you are being able to satisfy that creative impulse and that desire to create things just of your own.
Yeah.
So I think those are kind of two pieces of advice that I've learned over these past 5 years.
No, and that's great advice, because it's funny because my first love was photography, and then in video. I've been really, I just still love photography, and so, but once you start doing it for a living, it kind of zaps the creativity out of it,
Right.
Yeah, and so. There are times when on a weekend I'll have a camera at home and there's a beautiful snow or something beautiful is happening outside, or even if I'm driving somewhere and there's a beautiful sunset and I have my phone or whatever the case might be. There's still, once I look at that image and I begin to compose that image and frame it the way that I want it to, then yeah, there's that creative juice that keeps coming, and it's very invigorating. It's very reviving in a sense, and I'm reminded myself of why it is that I started to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and that is a huge challenge all at the time and you and I have had many conversations about this, some of them intense, about that regardless, we have to follow the money. We have to please the person that is paying us, and so, and that can be a huge conflict sometimes. So, yeah. Well, Will, you have been a godsend for us, and I sincerely wish you the best, and I hope that we can have you back often, and I hope that we can still use your creativity from time to time. And I just really want you to know how much I appreciate you, not only as a person, because you are a unique person. You just are a unique blend of many, many things, and those things have served me, Brent Clapp Media and LeGrand Alive and the community of LeGrand very well. I often tell the story of who's going to be on camera, and I said, well, I'm the boss and I vote you. and I remember how I remember watching you struggle to get over, because we all had in mind, what should an anchor be like? What, how are they going to be, and how should they talk, and how should they sound? And it just took a while, and there were lots of conversations of me just saying, you just need to let yourself be you. Just be you, and it just took you a while to get to that point to where you felt, yeah, it was the same thing, where
Right.
you felt comfortable being authentic in front of the camera. you
Right.
know. And
Very much so.
yeah, so I've watched that change in you, and I think that's been very meaningful for our community because
Right.
they've watched that too, you know.
Right.
And the person they see on the set, they see out on the street, and they see, you know, it's just you're the same person
Right.
in all of those places, and that's meaningful to them. So,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you, Brent.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
thank you for all you've done and for what you've done for LeGrand Live TV and for LeGrand. So hey, with that, we'll end this. We again thank our sponsor, Grand Ronde Hospital, Northwest Furniture and Mattress, EONI, and Anything to Digital. And be sure and like and share this. We say the same thing over and over again. Be sure and like and share this. And thank you guys. Visit our sponsors. Tell them that you saw their logos and heard them mentioned here. And we will see you next time on Eastern Oregon Talks.